Scott, what I was saying right before we went to the break that I got kind of tickled. Now, I was tickled in the way, not ha-ha, but as much as the absurdity of it all. And we barely touched on it, and I'm just going to repeat what we were talking about. Is when you were talking about the jot and the tittle, and I said, the rabbis actually threw out the entire language. But then I got to thinking, I may have mentioned it, I don't recall, but I got to thinking, based on the rabbis, which of course is reb, and this implies a reverence or exalted one is what it really means, and no man ought to be called that, only Yah should be called something like that. But the rabbis in rabbinical Judaism, you'd have to, if you believe that story of what they've done with their Talmud and so forth, you would have to believe that Yahweh chose them as the chosen people, and he asked them to present his message, which is his Torah, and he then handicapped them by telling them that you can't use his name, which is written 7,000 times. You can't, you're not going to be allowed to speak or write his name. You can't use his chosen alphabet. But I want you to go out there and tell it to the whole world. So, and then you would have to believe, and rather than just pick on Christianity, I thought I'd throw this in as well. And, oh, by the way, I want you to reinterpret it. That's the Talmud. That's all that is reinterpret their arguments. Then they'd have to invent new vowels, because now they wiped out the letters, so they have to, and they've thrown away all the vowels, so now they have to repoint it so we know how to pronounce it. And then they all vote on it.
My name is so awesome and amazing, and I've let everybody before you use it, but you can't use it anymore.
Yeah, and historically they're sitting on the rooftops. By the time they got into the Promised Land, they're shouting from the rooftops his name. And Yahushua can't even say it without fear. Well, he's not afraid, but without incurring death. And this is God's witness. You're supposed to believe that these people, are the leaders, and they're supposed to be like Aaron was. Anyway, and the same thing would apply to Paul's letters. So, but regardless, it's just the deception is so bad, it's frightening. So, in any case, I thought we would examine some of these atrocities in a little more detail. And we would start out with his name, as we were talking. It's a pretty awesome name, so let's explore that just a little bit. And, Scott, you know the word in Hebrew for name?
Tabar, correct? Or no,
that's word.
Yeah, that's word. For name. I'm not sure. No.
Shem is Shem, and of course in the rabbis would say Hashem because it's the name. They're not allowed to pronounce his name. So when you don't pronounce his name and you don't show his name, then you can't see the story. His whole story is almost written in his name. But so I broke down Shem, which is three words. Speaking of his name. Shem, of course, the Shin, rather, the SH sound is nourishment, words that are nourished. And then you have the Aleph, or the A, and that is primarily the Almighty One, the power, the authority, and so forth. And then the Mem, Shem, the M from the Mem is water that nourishes and brings life. So, the name is, but of course you can't pronounce his real name. So anyway, so we're getting to some serious atrocities in the way I look at it. In fact, that was a trigger for me when he came to. I was so disheartened. I knew I had in my notes. I went back and found my notes from an old sermon one time where they talked about his name, and they had Yahweh or Yahowah, and pronounced most of the time Yahweh instead of Yahweh or Yahowah. But I was so disheartened. I mean, it just became an obsession almost. How dare I not know his name? How can you have a relationship with somebody with, I know your name is Scott, my name is Kirk. I mean, that's kind of like a starting point.
It is. You have to know somebody. Every time you meet somebody, what's the first thing you do? You introduce yourself. You say, hey, my name is Scott. Oh, hey, nice to meet you. My name's Kirk. And that's how pretty much every human interaction starts. Yeah,
and it's just such a you can only imply from this kind of information. It more than applies. It proves that these people are trying to keep you away from Him. I mean, you say that to a Christian, that you go into church and listen to a preacher, they're trying to keep you away from God, and they would just about throw a rock at you.
And think how crazy that is, because Christians, they won't. What's God's name? He doesn't even have a name.
God. God is God's name.
He's a God. So you're telling me that He created Adam, He gave Adam a name. He created, Yahowah, He gave Yahowah a name. Obviously, they've changed that name. But he's given all these people a name. And you're saying that he just created names. He just randomly, well, I'm God, and you're Adam. Oh, okay. That doesn't make any sense.
No. I mean, if he introduced himself with a name. I mean, why does it disappear from all discussion at a certain point in history? I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous. So, first, let me say that there's no other name, and my conclusion of all this was there was no other name more important. I mean, this is a little bit understated, of course. There's no more important name to know and to understand than Yahowah, the creator of the universe. So for people who may be new and listen to this, Yahowah, of course, I'm going to break that down, if you don't mind. There's the Yah, which is a hand reaching down from above, reaching down with an open palm, reaching down to a person. In this case, we have a figure that's standing with the hands reaching up. It's the Hey, the letter Hey, and the letter Hey is human. And standing, engaged, and it often also means to behold. They have their hands up. They're reaching up to the hand that's reaching down, to lift down. That we did quite an extensive study on what that the lifting was, the barak. But we'll save that for another time. And then in between that, the wah, which is the tent peg that is used to increase the household, the family home. And then the last letter is a repeat of the second letter, which is the Hey. The Hey being in this particular case, when a Hey goes at the end of a word, it makes it feminine. So he's obviously talking about male and female, and we can imply that the enlarging of the tent, the enlarged intent, it looks like we build a bigger home because our family grows. So we have a hand reaching down to a family, a male and female, with the intention of increasing the family and growing together. And all of that is missed when you won't even speak his name. So I'm going to read a little bit. I'm going to go back to Proverbs. I have a lot of things in Proverbs. A book that a lot of people don't consider, but he's got some massive amount of good stuff here. And it's Proverbs 34, and if you'll allow me, I'll just read that to us. Who descends and ascends to heaven? Who gathers and receives the Spirit into the palms of his hands? Who wraps up the waters in a garment? And who comes onto the scene and stands upright? Enables others to stand and to establish all the earth without ceasing. And then the next line is, what is his personal and proper name? Question mark. And then it says, what is his son's personal and proper name? Surely you know. Now, how are you going to know if they hide it from you? How are you going to know if you call him God or Hashem or the name that can't be spoken? Obviously, this is Yahowah writing this. Yahowah obviously wanted his name known, and he also wants his son's name known. And the important reason, obvious reason, the most important reason there is when you add the two letters that make up the word Yahusha, which is Yahweh's son's name, you add two letters. You're familiar with those?
No, I'm not sure what they call them.
Well, it's the shin, which is the teeth. And the teeth, of course, is an SH sound. and that's for Shah. And then the is made by an I, and that's the A sound. So the only difference between his name and his son's name is that he has the Shah attached to it. And the Shah in Hebrew, of course, is saving us, or saving. So we know that the Son bears the same name as the Father. We know that it is the Father saving us. And all that beautiful implication there is lost because the name is lost. I mean, this is just serious atrocity. That's where we started, about the name and atrocities that are placed on or used to obliterate his name.
Quick question. I know that Yahusha is the diminished
manifestation
of Yah. You said that it's the Son. It's his Son. What do you mean by that?
Well, a son is Ben, and Ben is also recognized as a representative of, usually because in those days your number one representative would be a son in the family. He is diminished in the sense that Yah, as we know, is so powerful. He lives outside of the universe. He could not come into the universe because he took a bit of himself and spoke it into existence, communicated into existence. A bit of energy created everything that we know as the universe, and all that implies all the multiple galaxies and so forth. If he were to enter the universe, he would blow it up. We couldn't stand it. It would be as silly as you and I taking a rocket ship to the sun. We would just be totally wiped out. So he has to, in order to build this great universe, in order to participate in it, he has to diminish himself in order to come here. And the same thing with the Son. He is a diminished person, but certainly a part of Yahowah representing him. Just to finish, Scott, what we were discussing, Yah has to have a vehicle for him to enter and do things. And I think one of the best examples was Yahowah came up with the concept of water. Yahowah, the Father, our Almighty, he's like just this giant, let's call it ocean of water. And then he's going to take some of that water to do some work, and one of them is the set-apart spirit, the Kodesh Ruach, or Ruach Kodesh, a set-apart manifestation of himself that does the work. And he equated that, for our understanding, to steam. I thought it was an excellent analogy. Steam, can run a steamship. It can run a train. It's a very powerful thing. Now, in order for us to see him and relate to him, and for him to be with kinship, he needed a body to work in. So he created a body. In fact, it says, a child is born, a son is given. So the soul that's in there, that's very much Yahowah, in my understanding. And the soul and the body is just a body that he's going to use to do the work, because he was called, after all, the Messiah, and the Messiah means doing the work of Yahowah. So, but he has to do it through these channels because, for the obvious reasons, it has to work that he could not just come in and we would all be obliterated to begin with. So the Son does have those kind of connotations of Christian Son and separate being and so forth, but it's not a separate being. It's just a body that Yahweh is using to perform the work. As when we look at the letter Shem, the authority, it also means the ability and the strength to do the work. So it's Yahowah performing the work. It is Yahowah taking the blows. It's Yahowah doing everything. He's the one that's saving us.
Which is actually one of my favorite things about Yahweh is that it's the one time that he knew he couldn't protect his tool from harm.
No.
And it's the one time that he knew that something bad had to happen. Mm-hmm. And rather than him sending, somebody else to do it, he did it himself.
Yes.
And that to me is every time I think about that is fantastic to me.
Yeah. I wholeheartedly agree. It gives you chill bumps just, when you consider it, when you think about it, it's just, he walked, as Yahowah likes to say, he walked the walk and talked the talk, absolutely did. You know, when he was talking to the children in the wilderness, the Midbar, he was talking in a rather strong voice. I mean, I have no problem with that, but obviously they did. Maybe I would if I was there. I don't want to be sound like I'm that much different than anybody else. But as he was talking to them, they scared him. You know, they were frightened by it, and they told Moshe they said, you know, this is frightening. You'd like him to tone it down. And Yahowah, being the good father, he said, okay, I get it. And he reminds them at that point that there will come a time when someone has the same kinship, a human being, Yahowah, of the family of the same family, Yehudim, will come and he will tabernacle with us. He will come and he will be there and he will talk to us in the voice that we can understand. So just the ramifications, just thinking about Yahusha, there's so many layers here to discuss. But in any case, I wanted to point out a couple of things about Yahweh's name as we progress, and just remind some people that may not have read this somewhere. Yahweh's name appears in the Torah, Prophet, and Psalms. It's also called the Tanakh. If you run across it that way, they're talking Torah, Prophet, and Psalms. Yahweh's name appears 7,000 times. The number is rather significant in 7, and we can talk about that if you wish, because it comes into play over and over and over. But right before we do, let me just say that Yahusha's name, with the Shalom there, it appears in the Torah, Prophet, and Psalms 326 times. So it's not hitting there. You should, when he asks the question, what is his personal and proper name, and what is his son's name, or what is his representative's name, his Ben's name, then you should know it after 7,000 times and 326 times on Yahusha. And then there's 260 more times that actually I think that's incorrect. I think it's about 3,500. I mean, I don't worry about that number, but I think it's about 3,000 times where Yahweh's name is associated with other names like Yah and Yahukanan. And we will be back in just a moment. Well, as we were talking, I was going on about the name because, quite frankly, it was my hot button. It was something that struck me initially. One of the first things. Everyone has a hot button. I think when Yahowah was talking to a caller the other week or last week sometime, and maybe it was Frank, perhaps. I think it was Frank. You know, he was concerned about his daughter, and rightfully so. People trying to snatch him away, your children away from you. And the thing there was, we mentioned a hot button. Now, everybody's got a hot button. With me, it really turns into a hot button. And I want to at least get his name right so I can say Addy, you know, or hey. I mean, you ought to know whose name it is.
Well, it'd be really awkward to walk into somebody's house and not know.
Hey, what's the name? Hey, you.
Hey, sir.
Yeah. But the point is, with the numbers of how many times he wrote his name and how many times he would have to literally scratch it out, and the rabbis or the rabbinical, the Jews and priests and so forth, they really took him out. They would scratch out. There's something like, I can't give you the exact number, but it's about 6,500 times they scratched his name out. And they erased it around 300 times or something. It was just, and how do we know that? Because it's in the Dead Sea Scrolls and you can see it. I mean, so they'll have no case when Yahweh judges them. And he doesn't take time to anybody just, scratching out his name. I mean, he's made that perfectly clear through his word that we just scratching the surface of what we've discovered. 7 is important, and perhaps we can come back to that a little bit later. But I was going to continue, and still on talking about his name, I wanted to read for us Exodus 27. And Yahowah talking, and he says, you shall not, this is in Exodus 27, the first tablet. You know, there's 3 statements on the first tablet because they're long, and they're very, very important. They almost term the total conditions that for this agreement, for this family agreement, this family covenant agreement. And then on the second tablet, of course, there's 7 things on how to live, and that's good. But the third statement, written in stone on the first tablet, he says, "You shall not lift up, or you shall not lift up, or deceitfully advance lifelessness in the name of Yahowah, your God. For I will not consider innocent, forgive, pardon, release, or fail to punish one who by association promotes, sustains, or accepts that which is desolate, deceitful, deadly, destructive, or damning, showing lifelessness in my name." Wow. That's a pretty big declaration there. I mean, it's, so if that is your forte to go do that, you have at it. You got free will, but he makes it very clear that he doesn't appreciate any of this deceit. Then he has another warning. I'm going to go back to Proverbs 39. "And don't let me say, who is Yahowah?" Now, this is one of the prophets talking to Yahweh, and he says, "Don't let me say, who is Yahowah? Lest I be disinherited, caught in the act, arrested, incarcerated, for removing without permission and carrying away by stealth, clandestine, the proper and personal name of my God." So obviously, the author of Proverbs knew it. He got it. He understood what he read in Exodus, or in this case, so the whole story throughout the Torah seems to tell us a lot of the same stuff over and over and over, and it's just unquestionable that what God said He means, and people got it. Unfortunately, our generation didn't seem to get it, and for thousands of years they just didn't. But that's kind of scary. If you don't appreciate His name, that should scare you to death. Now, I wanted to mention that because verbs in Hebrew are not stuck in time, Yahweh can communicate to all the generations. So when He's saying these things, this is not something He said for the Yehudim or for the Israelites. It is something that's fixed in time, is always talked about for everyone who listens. Israelite is just anyone who strives with or wants to reach God and is willing to willing to get up and walk towards Him. So if there's any doubt, because that He cares about this, then I think in terms of, we have so little time yet. We only have a few years away from man's rule and man's horror and everything on the earth. In the Torah, which is very exciting, I'll throw this out to you, those who maybe haven't thought how much fun it is to read this. He actually tells you, we're approaching the year 6,000 Yah, and He's telling you the terms and conditions, which we'll get to a little bit later. And He's suggesting to you, He's telling you what He will not accept and what He, as well as what He will. And this, to continue on, involved in churches and involved in synagogues where people are just spitting on His name, erasing His name, and acting as if it means nothing to Him, then you'll suffer the consequences. There's always consequences for the things that we do. But He speaks very, very, very loudly, and He speaks actually for this generation. And as you move along in Proverbs, it's a little bit further down. I'm going to read that if you'll indulge me a little bit. Because you don't care what your Heavenly Father said. That's my words. Yah said to the generation, He said, a generation now, He's talking, the fact that verbs are not set in time, and I've just mentioned that, this is what I'm leading to. What He said then, long ago, was aimed at this generation. It could be any generation, but it's most definitely to this generation. And this is pretty heavy-duty stuff. 30:12 through 13, He says, a generation will be pure and clean in their own eyes, and yet not washed of the filth and the excrement, and we know what that is, the dung. A generation lofty, you could read arrogant and exalted. They're not exalted, no one is exalted, but they feel they are. A generation lofty and exalted in their own eyes. How and why are their eyelids raised? Now, that's an interesting little term. Obviously, he's talking about the Christian world today. He can talk about the Muslim world today. He can be talking about the rabbinical Judaism today, or any other group who thinks himself hot stuff. But the word of raised here is nasa, and of course nasal, which means to be lifted up, to expect to be carried away, and to be forgiven, and to endure, and to be removed. Well, he just said this is what he's implying, that they think because of through their own eyes, that they are clean and pure, when they're actually filthy. And in their own eyes, they're exalted, they're arrogantly exalted, they're lofty, that they think they're going to be raised. And let's think this through a minute. Where do you think? You've listened to enough Christian dogma. What's the Christian world awaiting?
Just to be saved, because
but the specific event that they're waiting, the lifting up, is called, they call it the
rapture.
The rapture, exactly. So to me, this hits home in that regard. Now, first of all, rapture would be a repugnant word to begin with, because it's really a translation that is a snatching, which means it's snatching away, and it implies a predator snatching away its prey. So the context of the word itself, as opposed to teruah, the trumpets, when Yahowah comes down, or His Spirit comes down and lifts you gently, just like the hand reaching down with open palm, Yahowah, lifting down to carry those away. And of course, he says there's only a few that will. But the entire Christian world is sitting here waiting for this wonderful event, because they view themselves as clean, and they view themselves as lofty and exalted.
Ironically, they might get exactly what they want, because he is going to come back. He is going to come down.
Oh yeah.
But there's those of us that are waiting for him to pick us up and take us away, and then it's going to be totally different for them, because he is going to be like a predator. He is going to be somebody that's coming back, and he's not going to be very friendly.
No, the light would shine, and if you're not covered with the set-apart spirit, the Ruach Kodesh, then of course you would be disintegrated. And once again, he's coming back. He said he's coming back very powerfully next time. So when you ratchet that power up, then you better be clothed with protection. Astronauts don't go out of space without clothing to protect them. And of course, our clothing is the mother bird image, the Ruach Kodesh, that covers us and protects us with her light. So without it, when he comes back, he doesn't have to hurt you. He just has to show up. You just melt in his presence if you're not covered.
Exactly.
And then when he comes to judge you, and the ones he's going to judge, the people who and listen, if he's not there to torture the people who were misguided and believed a lie, but he is most certainly there to the great exalted ones. And I think the term exalted is pretty cool. Rabbi means exalted, but it's also priest. I don't care who they are. They all think they're lofty and exalted. That's a different kettle of fish there. He's going to go after these guys like, he's going to be judging, and they're going to be brought before in the courtroom. And when he judges you, there's no way out. You're already judged. It's not like you have an option to plead your case. You can say whatever you want to say, but you're condemned by your actions. So, in any case, if you go to his word, he keeps saying the same thing over and over. He is really mad about this. This is not, and it's just, and we've only touched on one of the things, but we're going to continue on with some of the ways, I think, that'd be interesting, I think, that we could cover what those words that that people use to obliterate his name, like Lord and Jesus. So when we come back from break, we will do that. All right, Scott, as we're going into the last part of today's show, we will get to those all those names that Yahweh hates, and we'll get to those in the next program. Just a little recap of the way I approach this, and I appreciate y'all indulging me and letting me share this with you and do this program. I kind of started off with the soul, and because it's very important. The soul is the only thing that is of importance that will outlive our life. And the thing eternal would be the soul, and we found out through Yah's word that there's only three different options for the soul, and it can either die, it can be sucked in a black hole, so to speak, or it can live with Yahweh forever. So those are the things options that we have. And then Yahweh starts talking about how important the word is, and and we discussed that in great length on the bar. And what we have to do is Shamar Torah, study his word, carefully consider his word, and that's what we've been doing to maybe a little more feebly than others, but I think we're getting to the heart of the matter. And so we went over that, and we also went into the difficulties of it, which are having to plow through this morass of pile of things that are just so overwhelming and so distracting from what he actually said, and we have to go through those. And I was complimenting the Yahweh because he got down and started doing it, and that made it a lot easier for us to walk down the same path as far as studying the words and seeing what they really mean and putting all the pieces together, or certainly putting a lot of the pieces together. And then we quoted, I didn't say anything particularly great, but there's some awfully good quotes from Proverbs and all through the Torah, where he made it very, very clear what he thinks about his name. We started with the name, and what he thinks about people who choose not to honor his name or have respect for his name. It's not as bad enough. If you want to have a false god, why don't you just go invent one and stop using his and ride on his coattails? I mean, be creative if you can, but they don't. They want to just twist everything. I guess they think it's an easy sale, and apparently it is. But the tragedy of that is so many souls will be lost, and so many people will not be part of Yahweh's family because of this horrible. This horrible actions of twisting his words, obliterating his name, changing his name, and treating people so poorly. They just, and that's unfortunately was the Christian world that I came out of, and I, like so many, didn't even know I was in danger. I didn't even know that it was being changed so much, and that's why the study has become so vitally important, because once again, as my wife said, you only got one thing important in your life that will live past this, and that's your soul. So you want to take care of your soul, and you want to find out whether this is true or not. And so you start reading, you start studying, and we have some great vehicles, or Yada is giving us some great vehicles to start with, and then you do. Hopefully, I will encourage somebody to do what so many people do, much better than I, but I can do it too. And I bought some books and had some books and put them all together, and I just keep thinking about it and considered it, and there's a lot of stuff online. I would close with today. There's an awful lot of stuff online, but you have to be careful. You want to get your perspective right first, and that's why I would suggest that you go to Yahowah first and start analyzing that. Get your perspective right, so that when people are deceiving people start writing things, you'll be able to use some of these lexicons and dictionaries and so forth, because you have to remember these lexicons and things are also published by the same people who produce the Bibles, and they can't sell them if the preachers aren't buying or the churches aren't buying them. that is their market.
Intro to God is another good one.
Intro to God, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it's a little bit soft. It runs as it's not broken up quite so much. It runs kind of a long storyline. It's I like both equally as well. And then if you have a real problem with Christianity and Paul, or you're not sure who Paul is, it won't take long to figure that out when you read Questioning Paul. And we will see you again tomorrow.